Well, Pointer fans, welcome to our first Wisdom Wednesday as part of our Power of the Pointers series that we've launched in the last week. We're excited to come to you into your living rooms, into your homes, as we're all hopefully maintaining social distancing and safer at home. We're praying for all of you that everybody's healthy and doing well. And as part of what our series is to bring a little joy and a little conversation about what Pointer athletics has meant, does mean, will mean. Right now, this time of uncertainty, we certainly, we have 125 years of history at Stevens Point and over 100 years of athletic history. And we're excited to hear from lessons from our legends. Our first one this Wednesday comes from a guy who I would say has been as instrumental to me in my career as anybody I've come across. You know, Frank O'Brien, our legendary athletic director, has been part of UW Stevens Point athletics since 1991. And when I started here, 4.5 years ago, probably the smartest move that I've ever made in my career was to ask, beg, hope that Frank would stay around with me and help mentor me and our staff, and he's done that. He's a Hall of Famer at UW Stevens Point. He's a Hall of Famer in the WIAC. He's a Hall of Fame human. And, this is the kind of guy Frank is. I was here for about 6 weeks, and my kids were already calling him Uncle Frank. So we're lucky to have one of our legends with us this morning and with us in your living room. Our first legend and Wisdom Wednesday, Frank O'Brien. Welcome, Frank. How are you?
Good morning, buddy. How are you?
We're doing well, man. We're doing well, and the Pointers are excited to hear from you. And we've got a few questions for you this morning. We're going to start with, in your opinion, Frank, you've seen Pointer athletics for a long time. How has athletics changed since you were first hired in athletics in the early 90s?
Wow. Well, it's changed a lot. The obvious change is moving from the College of Professional Studies to Student Affairs. And with that came a lot of serious transitional issues. But, back in the early 90s, we were still dealing with Title IX issues. We were dealing with a lot of facility issues. I mean, can you imagine having a soccer game with no fence around the field? And I was the ball shagger. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
We had softball and baseball with no press boxes. So we're sitting out in the cold, doing all stats by hand. Facilities were a big focus in Title IX and, trying to get travel. We used to have teams, baseball, softball, soccer, volleyball, traveling in vans with coaches, driving, and we had to take care of a lot of that stuff. And, those were budgetary issues. And, at that time too, all of our coaches were teaching along with coaching, so that, we didn't have a lot of help. It was basically the sports information director, our program assistant, myself, and then all undergraduate students. So we had undergraduate students. We'd take them in, and we typically took local people from the Stevens Point area because we needed them during the semester break. Mm-hmm. And they'd start as freshmen, and they'd work for us for 4 years. So we had students that were actually doing a lot of games management and things, because we had our 20 sports. We had multiple sports going all the time like we do now. But, one of your head coaches right now was one of those, Mr. Witt. Brett worked for me for 4 years, and, they had a lot of responsibility for students, and a lot of them went on to do collegiate athletics. I remember one, Katie Hughes, who worked for us for 4 years, applied for a grad assistantship down at Florida State, and when they were looking at her resume, they thought that she had embellished things because she had everything on there for, you know, games management and working in tickets and all that. So during her interview, they asked her about it and literally hired her on the spot after she told them what she did. But, you know, they didn't understand the difference between Division I and Division III at the time. So, you know, all of our coaches were teaching, so we didn't have the option of having them help us in areas. So it was pretty much a free-for-all at the time, but we had great students, and you know, they really stepped up and helped out a lot. So yeah, a lot has changed over the years.
You know, for the Pointer fans that are out there, one of my indoctrinations to Pointer athletics was a hot July morning when Frank took me and Tony Baressa, our director of facilities, and he said, "Hey boys, get up early, bring your coffee and bring your hammer, because we got to fix some benches on the soccer field." And I knew at that point, when people say Frank built this place in a lot of ways from the ground up with his hands, that's actually very true. And I think a lot of our fans don't understand how hard you guys work, your staff, your faculty, you know, guys like Fred Hebert, you know, who helped you guys raise a bunch of money from local people. And, you know, it was Stevens Point community, bring your hammers, bring your saws, and let's get together on Sunday and build this press box or build this, you know, whatever we needed. So, you know, Frank, as we kind of move forward, you know, you've had a historic career, worked with a lot of great coaches and won a lot of national championships and everything along the way. But what are some of your most memorable moments leading the athletic department at Stevens Point?
Wow. Most of them have to do with people, Brad. You know, the championships were fun, and clearly they're memorable, but it's, you know, playing World Cup with the soccer team at the soccer Final Four, and, you know, shagging balls, baseball, and, you know, it was about the people. And again, don't misunderstand me. The championships are always fun, and we won quite a few team championships and individual championships. But it's mostly about the people. We used to have a picnic where we we had all of our coaches cook for all of our student athletes. So we'd have burgers and brats and chips and fruit and potato salad, and we'd rent Bucol Park, and our coaches would go out there in the early morning, and we'd all stay out there and cook, and then we'd feed, you know, 350, 400 student athletes that night and give out our awards there. And something as simple as that. You know, student athletes enjoyed it, the coaches enjoyed it. You know, those are the things, the people, and it was fun. I mean, we worked together. We made a lot of mistakes. We had certainly our successes, but people chipped in, and we did what we had to do with what we had. And, you know, I look back on it, and my children grew up around the gym. And, I mean, my oldest daughter, during the Century Classic, when she was 12, 13, is in the concession stand, running the concession stand. You know,
Yeah.
you just did what you had to do. And, you know, at the time, it was fun some days, and other days it was just a scramble. It was what we used to refer to as organized chaos. You know, but we got it done, and we all survived, and I think we had fun.
Well, you know, the two things, you hit on a couple of things there that really have struck me in your mentorship to me. I had not won a national championship till I got here, and thankfully, and it was a great time. But you had said something to me years ago. You said, "Brad, you know, the national championships are fun, but you'll realize you get back to work on Monday morning and it doesn't change that." And it's really exciting. And, you know, that was really true coming off a magical championship, but life returns to normal, but it's the people. And the other thing that's been really striking as an athletic director is if somebody were to say to me, Brad, what's the number one question you get as the athletic director? It is typically, hey, how's Frank doing? You know, so I think you made a big impact here, sir, on the people of Stevens Point. And we're certainly lucky to have you. You know, from your standpoint, what's the role of athletics for student athletes? You know, how does athletics play in a student athlete's career and then maybe beyond?
Yeah. Well, athletics teaches a lot of valuable life lessons. And I think when people get older, they understand the value of it better. Mm-hmm. We deal with a lot of success. We deal with disappointment. Yep. We work as hard as we can to achieve a goal. We don't always achieve it. You know, there are very few things in life where, you know, you literally draw a line in the sand and you pull. You're pulling one way, the competition is pulling the other way. Somebody has to come across that line. And it's published on the front page of the paper. It's on the radio, it's on the news and on TV. And there are very few professions that stand up to that kind of public scrutiny and stuff. So, you know, you work hard as a student athlete, you make a commitment, you learn a lot about teamwork, you learn a lot about sacrifice and doing what you can for the greater good. But boy, I'll tell you, that lesson about wanting something and you don't necessarily achieve the goal that you've set for yourself, and you have to go back to the drawing board. You have to go back and figure out and work hard and maybe make some changes. But there's so much value to that in life as you go on, and you don't get the job you wanted, or the promotion you wanted, or you don't get the outcomes you wanted in a business setting or a professional setting. And for a lot of people, it can devastate them. And a lot of student athletes they understand that disappointment, and they understand that outcome that they didn't necessarily want doesn't define them. What defines them is how they deal with that, how they move forward. And you know, as a grown man, that there's tremendous value in that we don't get what we want just because we worked hard to get it. And you know, you go back to the drawing board and you work hard, and then you see the fruits of your efforts, and you go forward. But again, there's tremendous life lessons and life skills that you develop as a student athlete. And yeah, again, a lot of it has to do with hard work, teamwork, commitment, understanding there's a greater good, that it's not all about you, and that, yeah, sometimes we don't get the outcomes that we want, and then we go back and we work hard, and how we deal with that is oftentimes what defines us, not the fact that we didn't achieve the outcome we wanted, but how we responded to it, and how we came back.
Yeah. Great lessons for people today. You know, when we're going through a lot of adversity and change, not everything's going to work out the way you want it, but it reminds me of a quote I've heard several times. You know, things work out the best for the people that make the best of the way things work out. you know, and
Yeah.
you gotta do that, and you gotta come back stronger. And, you know, I think, Frank, this final question for all of us that are going to watch this, I think this is as valuable as anything as we're moving forward, and our student athletes, most importantly, are moving into their careers. You know, if you could go back and give yourself, you know, some advice when you were entering college or entering into the workforce, what advice would you give yourself?
Well, when I first entered college, I was 17. I did one semester and I was invited not to return. So I joined the Marine Corps after that. And, you know, I was a 22-year-old freshman after I got out of the service. So my perspective is a little bit different, because when I went back to college after being in the Marine Corps, I was much more focused. And I had to work for, you know, to get through college. I got the GI Bill, and between the GI Bill and working, I was able to get through school. So you know, my experiences, it would be a lot different than a traditional college student. However, in your college experience, you're going to have, now I'm going to speak specifically about student athletes. You're going to have academics, athletics, and the social part of it. What will sustain you when you're done with your years of college is what you do typically academically, what you learn in your major, and what, you know, you're going to do professionally. However, your memories are typically going to be based on athletics and what you did socially. Let's not kid each other.
Yep.
You know, as a student athlete, the road trips, you know, the games, the people. Again, it's about the people, and learning to balance that. If it's all academics and all athletics, then you're missing a huge part of college life, which is the social part, where you learn a lot of valuable life skills in that 18 to 22, 23 time of your life. If it's all about grins and giggles, then you might miss a little bit of the academic prep that you will need down the road. So, you know, it's about balance. There's a time and a place for, obviously, athletics. There's a time and a place for the social aspect of it. And certainly there's a time and a place for academics. And again, your primary reason for being in college is to prepare you for life after college as you get into the workforce. And that's what will typically sustain you and your family. And the degree, and whatever your degree is in, may not be the most important thing you do, because a college degree basically demonstrates to a potential employer that you have the ability to focus, to carry through what you committed to getting that degree. So, you know, that's a pretty important thing. So I would say a lot of it is just about balance, and, you know, there's a time and a place for all of it. And just understanding that, you know, there needs to be some balance there. One thing I wanted to go back to, you know, what you were talking about before is Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl was unfortunately part of the Holocaust, saw a lot of things, obviously bad things happen with his family and friends. But one of the things he said is one of the things that we each have the ability to do in any given time and place is choose our attitude. that nobody can dictate our attitudes to us. And, I guess that would be one of the things that I would encourage people, when they deal with college and they're dealing with the pressures of academics and athletics and what have you, is, your attitude and how you view things is going to make a huge difference in the kind of experience you have in college.
Those are great words, Frank. And, just in closing, first, let me say thank you for giving us a half hour of your time. I think this is some great messaging that our student athletes, coaches, everyone can take a lot from. And, as always, you've been selfless in terms of what it means to be a Pointer. And I think that defines, you define what we'd want everybody to be. So thank you for taking your time there, Frank. We appreciate that. Yeah. As we close here, I grew up in a family too of farmers and military people. And one thing my father made sure I understood early in my life is when there's smart people around, just shut up and listen. I can remember hearing that 1,000 times of, don't try to be the smartest guy in the room all the time. Shut up and listen to people. They got good things to say. And my dad wasn't wrong. And I just want to extend my thank you, but I can tell you that this, on behalf of thousands of former student athletes, hundreds of staff members, thank you, because all of us who have shut up and listened to you over the course of time have come away a better person. And, you've always allowed, I think one of the things that indicates a good leader is somebody who's willing to shove somebody else out on a limb, let them shine. But when the limb looks like it's about to break, you pull them back and don't let them fall. And that's what you meant to me and so many others, Frank, is you've always been the guy to hold the limb up, let other people shine. But gosh darn it, if that limb's about to fall, you're going to pull them back and then you'll run out there if you need to. So thanks on behalf of the Pointers, and thanks for being our first Wednesday, Frank. We appreciate it. I think this was a great segment to get us started. So I'll leave you with the final words.
Well, my final words would be, just remember, if you're ever spending a lot of time looking for someone to do something, take a good look in the mirror. You'll always find them.
Once again, thanks, Frank, and take care, everybody. Be safe.
All right, buddy. Thank you. Hey, Brad, keep up the great work. We are, I've told you this before, and I mean it. We are blessed to have you as our leader. And you're doing a great job. I've told you this before, the work you're doing, guiding and managing us through a very crazy time in this world. And just the things you do day to day are greatly appreciated. And I have been blessed, and it's been a pleasure to be able to continue to work with Pointer Athletics and to work with you. So on behalf, you say on behalf, well, I know on behalf of our student athletes now and our staff, because I'm still connected, you're very much appreciated, and the work you're doing for Pointer Athletics does not go unnoticed. So thanks for all you're doing for us right now, bud.
Thanks, Frank. That means the world to me, and I certainly appreciate it.
All right, now.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you again next Wednesday for the second segment of Wisdom Wednesday.